I call the meeting to order. I could have roll, please.
Copperly. Barton.
Here.
Fetteridge.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Shook. Spar.
Here.
Warren.
Here.
Thank you.
Has everybody had a chance to look at last month's minutes? If there's no amendments, I'll hear a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes as stated.
I'll second.
Barton.
Yes.
Fetteridge.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Spar.
Yes.
And Warren.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we start tonight, council's going to read a short statement.
Thank you. Public hearings are being held tonight pursuant to published notice. Any person wishing to address the zoning board will be sworn in by our court reporter and will give their testimony under oath or affirmation. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the zoning board of appeals will make its determination. 4 yes votes are required to obtain the approval of the zoning board of appeals. The purpose of a public hearing is for the zoning board to hear testimony regarding whether the proposed variance meets the required legal standards for the variance to be issued, standards set forth in our village code. The public hearing is not intended to afford individuals an opportunity to comment generally on whether a proposed project is or is not a good idea. Relevant factors for the zoning board to consider are set by state law and the village code. Those factors include whether hardship exists, which is not caused by the owner and which is unique to the property, whether granting the variance will be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other property in the area, whether the proposed variance will cause traffic problems, impair property values, endanger public safety. Testimony should be limited to the relevant factors I've explained. In addition to testifying or providing a statement to the zoning board, any property owner within 250 feet of the property at issue will have the opportunity upon recognition by our chair to cross-examine the petitioner who presents their case before us. That opportunity to cross-examine is limited only to people in a 250-foot radius of the property at issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll start off tonight. First case. Case number 1602, the Apostolic Christian Home for Handicapped is requesting a variance for a second driveway at 825 and 827 East Jackson Street, zoned R2. Petitioner seeks a variance to allow a second driveway. Who's going to speak to this case? Okay, would you like to just stand up, be sworn in, and just give your name and address once you get to the podium?
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good evening. My name is Ron Messner. I'm the director of the Apostolic Christian Services. I'm a resident of Morton. I live at 1001 Brentwood Road. I'll try and keep my remarks fairly brief. If you have questions, I appreciate just receiving those. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you. I want to give just a little background of who we are. I think probably most of you are aware of that, but we certainly consider it a privilege to be a part of the Morton community and are thankful for the receptiveness we've received over the years, from some from you, certainly from the other village entities, and grateful for the good relationship we have with neighbors, merchants, vendors. We presently have 13 homes in the community. Probably you're aware we have a large facility out on Veterans Road and 2 smaller ones there, but 13 scattered through the community. Most of these have 4 people who live in them. So it started in the late 80s as the village of Morton. Some of you may remember that, adapted their code to meet the Federal Fair Housing Act. At that time, the village's code didn't allow for people with disabilities to live in R1, as was required by law. So we're grateful to be able to work with them and to be sure to remove any legal barriers to meet that law. The state allows us to have up to 8 people living in a facility. We've made a commitment to the community to try to keep that to 4. Once in a while it's 5 or 6. But we do that to blend into the community. We serve adults with developmental disabilities, that is people who are disabled from birth or shortly after birth, people who are not able to care for themselves. Technically, those are usually intellectual disabilities, but they typically have physical disabilities also, which we'll touch on when we come to the variance that we're requesting. We've been able to purchase existing homes in the community. It's been our goal to have them blend in so they're not noticed, so you know, so we're not out on the edges of town. We worked very hard to make those adaptations discreet. I would guess that most people here, unless you're a neighbor, don't know where our homes are. It's our goal for that not to be noticed, both for the sake of the neighborhood, but also for the sake of the people that live with us, so that they can feel just like other neighbors. The duplex, which is on the board at 825, 827 Jackson, it's been a great home for us. We had one duplex before. We added this because it gives more autonomy and independence for our people if a couple can live on either side, but function together. As I'm sure you know, given the people that we serve, they need support from our staff, and they're not able to transport themselves, which is what the hearing is about tonight. We do most of the transportation, but for work purposes, we use WeCare. It's contracted either by ourselves or else by the day program provider. WeCare has certain safety policies in place. They're not ours, although we're supportive of them. We're thankful for their services. One of which is they will not back onto a highway. They're very cautious in general about backing, but they've said they would not back onto a highway, and they won't back around in someone's yard. We'd looked with the neighbors at the possibility of putting pads in place. They could pull in and back around and pull out, and they said that the backing was not safe. So currently we have a sidewalk. I just want to point it out because it's not in this drawing. There's a sidewalk from here out to the street. WeCare will not stop on 150, so they stop on that sidewalk, and that's where our people are picked up. The concern we have is if it's snowy, icy, cold, whatever, we're not able to keep that as safe as it needs to be, and the people that we serve are not always ambulant enough to make use of that. So the only way to accommodate their policies, WeCare's policies, is to have a driveway that would pull through, and I think you have the paperwork, the drawing that shows that. In that case, I won't point it out in there. You've got that. If somebody has questions, be glad to do that. We're here requesting a variance because I understand it, and Roger may have to help me out. I think it would require 150-foot frontage to put a second driveway there. And I believe it's 135 or 140 feet, so we're just short of what's required to put it there. We're coming to make the request, although after looking at it, I believe this is accurate, that for a duplex, that each living unit is allowed to have a separate driveway of 24 feet, and that we could possibly request the village just to put a second driveway there. Feels a little disingenuous to us because we really intend it to be a drive-through, even though there would, I believe we would be able to put like a garage or driveway in back or on the end of that, and that would meet the zoning requirements because they would each be 24 feet. They can't exceed 48 total, I think, if I have that correct. So just want to make you aware of that. What we will end up doing, if you give support to us, it'll be a combined driveway width of 36 feet. The existing driveway is just over 20. It's 20 feet, 8 inches. And we're proposing to put a 16-inch driveway there. We understand some of the neighbors are concerned. They've contacted us, been very gracious in that interaction and looking at alternatives for what we can do. And we certainly don't want to minimize neighborhood concerns. We've gone through this before with other properties, been able to work that out and maintain good relationships. We know that one of their concerns, obviously, is a concern about increased traffic. And I don't want to be argumentative. It's not my nature. But I do want to point out that our goal in doing this, we believe we can reduce traffic, not increase it. Currently, again, what happens is WeCare stops here, waits for our people to drive out, and then continues up the end of Minnesota and out through the neighborhoods. If we're able to put this drive-through, they will drop directly back out into the highway so that the WeCare vans that come will not make use of Minnesota, but will stay on that within 50 feet of 150 of Jackson there. We can't regulate them. We can't forbid them to do that. But obviously their traffic pattern would be to drop out into 150. In addition, currently with just the single driveway that's there, at certain times we instruct our staff not to park in it because they're going to block somebody else. If we can have a drive-through, then part of that driveway we could use as a parking lane and pull some of the traffic off of the current Minnesota on perhaps third shift or on weekend shifts. That's really what I have to present. We're thankful for the opportunity to share it with you. Try to answer questions as you have those, or if there's other questions. Thanks for the opportunity.
Who wants to speak this case first?
I can go ahead.
Okay. You want to just stand up?
Have some questions.
Okay, just, you can be sworn in. And
Raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear from the college you're talking to is nothing but the truth?
if you could, just step up to the podium.
Okay.
Okay. I feel like we ought to be singing a duet up here at the same mic.
I'm willing if you are.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Oswald. My wife and I live at 409 North Minnesota, which is right up here, just off the corner of the property. And I, as well as some of the other neighbors here tonight, have had some concerns. I do want to say a couple of things before I ask Ron his questions. As he mentioned, I mean, it's been a very cordial process. We've been trying to work on a compromise, if it's been possible. As far as we can tell, there isn't one. At least maybe there's better minds that can prevail. But the other thing I want to really get across, and I think I speak for all of the neighbors that are gathered here tonight, is that our neighborhood does not have any problem with the folks living in the AC Home for the Handicapped residents. They've been good neighbors, generally speaking. I mean, you don't have to worry about loud parties or, kinds of things that you might associate with multifamily housing. And I think it's fair to say that all of us would recognize that each of these men and women that live in these duplexes and live in the other units that you have in town are children of God that deserve our respect, deserve dignity, and deserve our consideration, even if we disagree on whether we think there ought to be a driveway. So with that out of the way, I do have a few questions. Ron, if you could speak to this. Now, you had mentioned in your testimony that there's 13 homes that you run around Morton. And you and I had talked a little bit about the various facilities earlier this week. You'd mentioned also here tonight that you can put 4 to 8 people in a facility. And I guess my question for you is that since this is two-family, is each side of this considered technically a facility, or is this one facility?
That's a good question. I'll go as deep as you want into mental health regs, but I'm trying not to. So it's licensed as a building.
Okay.
So they're called CILAs, Community Integrated Living Arrangements, and as they're licensed by the state, each unit is licensed. So some agencies like ourselves will choose to do a duplex, but more for the purpose 2 people can live in semi-privacy on one side or 2 on another. The 2 units are actually adjoined at this point.
Okay.
I mean, we can put a wall through there. But the state would not let you put 2 units that close.
Okay.
The state has distant requirements
Okay.
that you have to meet, so it has to be 1.
Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up. And you'd also mentioned that as you group individuals in the various units, that you do that without regard to physical disability or mental disability, that your focus is, and I'll let you speak to that, because I'm going to ask 2 questions, I guess, so.
Yeah, and I think this question has to do with something we discussed about, can we have people move based on their ability to access transportation or places? And actually, state law requires that people be placed based on their preference. That gets pretty murky, and because we can't just move people around, and sometimes somebody wants to live with somebody and somebody else doesn't. But technically, we can't move people just because they have this disability or that one. So we group people as the best we can based on their compatibility. So sometimes that takes into account people's ambulation. It certainly takes into account level of functioning, because that's who's most likely to do things together and have the same activities. But it's not based specifically on disability.
Okay, very good. And that's true of all 13 of your properties in town?
Correct.
Okay. And of your 13 properties in town, as we discussed, there's only one other one that exists that does have a pull-through at this time, correct?
Correct.
And you did not install that pull-through that was there
Correct.
originally? Okay. So it's fair to say then, well, let me back up. With the We Care bus, does that service all 13 of your properties?
I'd like to answer every question intelligently, and I can't answer that one intelligently. It serves each property that has people that attend a workshop. And to the best of my knowledge, that would include all 13, but I couldn't say that affirmatively. So I would say most, but I couldn't say for certainty.
Okay. And you testified here tonight that the We Care bus does not pull into a driveway at any facility, correct?
No.
Other than a pull-through?
No, actually that's not.
Okay.
It's a good question. So in general, they don't like to back out anywhere, but they will make modifications if it's on a quiet street. So we have some streets where either they need to turn around or we have people that aren't able to ambulate out the end of their driveway that they'll pull into, but they said in no case will they do that onto a highway.
Okay.
But there are, if you were to go look at their regs or ask them, I think their answer would be no, we don't. But they modified that in certain circumstances. They just said they simply wouldn't do it onto Jackson.
Okay, so I understood that they wouldn't go in reverse ever. I mean, that was sort of the conversation that we had.
Yeah, by policy.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean there's not waivers to that. I mean, they would have to speak for when they do it, but we talked about this property, and they said in no case would they do it here.
Okay, is there anybody from We Care here tonight
No.
to talk to any of this? Okay. So,
Not that I know of.
okay, is there anybody from We Care here tonight? I'd be interested. Okay. So I guess, really, we don't know whether they, in what circumstances they back or wouldn't. I mean, you'd be guessing to say that.
Well, we did ask them that, and they said not onto a highway. They said on a quiet street, they'll sometimes make an allowance for it.
Okay, but they're
I
not
mean,
going to testify.
That's correct.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So I guess at most of these other properties, since there's not a pull-through drive, unless they're pulling in and backing out of the drive, your residents are walking from the house to the street via a sidewalk or driveway?
Yeah, in most of the cases, it'd be a driveway similar to this. Those who are able would walk out it. And none of them is the driveway as long as the sidewalk, which extends out. And so whether they pull in or not is going to have to do with how ambulant the people are who live there. So there are some that they pull into and some that they don't.
Okay.
We Care is a great agency. They're very flexible. They work with us as they can, so.
Okay. Okay, well, I've not been able to touch base with anybody from We Care. We don't have anybody here tonight, so it would be interesting to know in what situations they would or would not, what their policy is, I guess is what I'm saying. Okay. So I guess for each of your other properties, you've made a determination that thus far, pull-through drive or no pull-through drive, that they're sufficiently accessible for your operations.
Yeah, they are because We Care has agreed to pull in on the ones that we need them to, and they're on quieter streets.
Okay.
So it's been successful for that, except the one which you went to look at, they do pull through that.
Okay, well, I don't have any further cross-examination questions for you at this time.
Okay. I assume there's somebody else that wants to speak this case?
Well,
Chris can give testimony.
I may have some testimony.
Oh, okay,
But I don't have any further questions
okay.
for Mr.
Well, if you want to step up to the podium, then you can,
Oh, okay, very good.
Okay, that's all you need from me for now.
yeah,
Not be here.
yeah, yeah.
So what I want to emphasize tonight, as a neighbor, and full disclosure, I am a real estate attorney. I do work with Miller, Hall, and Triggs in Peoria, and we do zoning and transactional types of work all the time, so I'm familiar with the standards that we're working on here. And to my first point, I really want to emphasize that this is, in my mind, a situation which we're looking at a variation of the rules that could affect, over time, incremental change in the neighborhood. And in my opinion, it's about whether the zoning rules, which you all have the guard of as the Zoning Board of Appeals, are required to be changed in this situation. If this is a situation of mere convenience or one that really is a practical difficulty or particular hardship of the property. And Roger, you have my PowerPoint slides.
If I can find it here.
One of the things that Ron had mentioned is that they do try to blend as closely as possible into the neighborhood. And, I think for the most part, we would say that the residents, we would agree that the residents do. The thing that we noticed, we bought our home on 409 North Minnesota about a year and a half before the Home for the Handicapped came in. And when we moved there, the street was very quiet, very little traffic, very little parking by our home. After the Home for the Handicapped moved to the property and they poured the sidewalk down the side, we noticed the employee traffic would come very frequently. And it's, 1 or 2 cars at a time, but taken in the consideration of the context of this particular block, I think we'll be able to show why there's a problem. Now, if well, Roger's working on that. My Exhibit A. I'll hand one to each of you. I have one too. My Exhibit A is actually, and I'll keep going while they're trying to figure that out, but my Exhibit A is actually the first page of the original restrictive covenants that were recorded in our subdivision back in 1967. Now, I'm not entering these for proof of any of the matters asserted in there, other than to say that when we talk about change in zoning, we're talking about steps that change the character of the neighborhood. If you look at paragraph 1 of those subdivisions back in 1967, all lots in our subdivision, Northbrook Estate Section 2, were supposed to be used for single-family residential purposes only. Now, what's happened between now and 1962? The march of time, incremental change. I'm going to give you my Exhibit B, which maybe they'll come up with. But this is a... Can you all hear me? Can you hear me well enough? This is a aerial view from the Tazewell County GIS system that shows the end of our neighborhood. And I want you to take a look at Jackson Street on our neighborhood. Our neighborhood would go to the north. It would include Missouri, Minnesota, and Montana streets. This Northbrook Estates, as it was developed in the late 60s and into the 70s, our home was built in 1976. At some point in time, these duplexes were constructed in these lots down here. So clearly somebody decided that it was okay to change the original scheme of the subdivision to allow this multifamily. If you look at the zoning map, just these lots are zoned R2, which would allow multifamily. But take a look at the orientation of these lots. These duplexes all face Jackson Street, and I think that's true as you go further down on Jackson Street to some of the other neighborhoods. Those duplexes, which are the multifamily units, all face Jackson Street. They all share in common a solid curb line along the State Street that separates the effects of increased density from the single-family residential homes back in the neighborhood. I would argue that by allowing this curb cut, allowing this driveway to be put in place here, you're essentially taking away the barrier that was originally constructed from the multifamily to the single-family property, taking away green space that was otherwise in our neighborhood and replacing it with a drive. The other thing about zoning that I'd like to point out is that it's permanent. It doesn't matter if the AC Home for the Handicap's running this property, which around town they have a good reputation for running, but if they sell this home sometime, and I don't think there's an intention to presently, but if they sell this at some time, this variance is permanent. This driveway is permanent. Whoever buys this home following this organization will have the right to use that driveway for whatever they want. They want to put, if they want to fill those 2 units, they could have cars parked all over those driveways. Aesthetically, obviously, that's not something we're in favor of. Compounding this problem is a traffic issue. There's a number of kids in our neighborhood. We're obviously concerned about traffic, more so maybe than some because we don't have sidewalks that line our street. So when our kids ride their bike down to the neighbor's house, they ride on the street. That's the fact of the matter. It's the only thing they can do. About 5 years ago, the city and IDOT overhauled the US 150 that goes along on the corner there, and you'll see it on the GIS map. You know where this is located. When they put in the center turn lane, they took away the street parking on either side of Jackson Street. So what we have now is the neighbors on Jackson Street that have overflow parking will park on the state streets, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana. So now we have the employee parking in here. We have visitor parking to the residents of the home. We have parking overflow from the neighbors on the other side of Jackson. And I'll show you, this is my Exhibit C. This is a photo from Sunday. It just shows you what, this is in front of my neighbor's house, what parking might look like at any given moment. 2 of those cars are employees of the Home for the Handicapped. 2 of those are neighbors. What you don't see from this picture is on a warm summer weekend, when people are out and about, and depending on who's living in the duplex at any given time, younger family members might come to visit. We've had as many as 8 to 10 cars parked out in front of the street for any number of hours. On the weekends, sometimes we can't park our own cars out in front of our house if we're trying to clean out the garage or something. So it makes for a congested intersection, not only from an aesthetic, but also from a traffic standpoint. Making that turn out onto 150 from the stop sign, and some of the neighbors here would vouch for this, that it can be difficult to see around the traffic. It can be difficult turning into the street to see the cars on either side of the street. And there's been occasions when I and others have actually nearly clipped a car because we didn't see it when we were turning the corner there. If we put the driveway in this location, you're going to shift this parking further down into the neighborhood. You're going to bring the traffic, and I know that they said that this is for the We Care bus, but if you connect it through driveway to Jackson Street, the traffic that otherwise would be using that driveway on Jackson Street as a logical means is going to take the easier route to enter back onto the public streets. That's always going to be North Minnesota. The one exception I might say would be the We Care bus if we have parking like is in this photo here. If they're trying to make a left turn onto Minnesota, the petitioner's application shows a driveway that angles back into the neighborhood. Now, they would have to make a left turn against the angle of that driveway and potentially with cars on either side of the street, reducing an otherwise 50-foot street to about 30 feet for them to make a left turn. I'm not sure that they would do that every time. I think they would go into the neighborhood. Additionally, and Ron can speak to this later, but I still have concerns that with the employees parking on the street, if they're using this as a pull-through, it's not clear to me where those cars would park, given the layout of their driveway. Since we've moved in and since the Home for the Handicapped has moved in next to us, the traffic is noticeable. It's at all hours of the day and night when they have their shift changes. It's late. You hear the cars, you hear the doors, you hear people talking. At times we'll have people, and all of these people are people we don't know. The residents are there. Some of the neighbors have met them. Nice folks. The employees, we don't know. They come through our neighborhood. They don't know that there's kids at certain houses. They don't know that we have our own child in the neighborhood that has some disabilities and has to be watched out for. It causes noise and traffic at times when you wouldn't expect it in a residential neighborhood. My Exhibit D, this is just a personal matter. You can't see much in this, but about 3 months ago, this was 1 in the morning at my house. I heard beeping and crashing and couldn't figure out what was going on, so I looked out the window. And it's just one of the employees' cars broken down, which for anybody on any residential street at any other time of the day would not typically be at 1 in the morning. You might see that in the morning when they're leaving for work or at home when they get home at night. But because of the round-the-clock care, you have people round the clock in the neighborhood that are not typical to the neighborhood. I understand and appreciate that the caregivers are necessary to give care. We'd like to see them in the driveway if possible, but we don't think that this is the solution. Now, there's a mention of some standards here. And I would suggest that in reviewing the case to determine whether there is a practical difficulty or particular hardship with respect to this property versus a mere inconvenience, I would suggest this, that there are 13 other properties in town, as stated, that, well, 13 total, I guess, including this property. At 11 of those, we have a situation where there's not a pull-through, and yet they're able to use these facilities without the benefit of that pull-through drive. We don't have anybody here from We Care tonight that can say for a fact that there's no circumstance under which they would turn around or back up or change direction in this particular driveway. I wish we did. I'd like to have questions for them. But the fact of the matter is, apparently they are backing up in some circumstances out onto streets. I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to negotiate a simple turn with a larger pad and keep the traffic on Jackson. Whether we're talking about 5 feet or 10 feet, I would argue that really the issue here is keeping the sidewalk clear that's on the side of the street. Most of the individuals that I've seen at this house have been able to negotiate that sidewalk. Perhaps there's other ways we can talk about keeping that sidewalk clear, either by hiring a dedicated service that's able to, by installing electric heat on the concrete that would melt the snow and ice, by taking some other measure short of requiring the bus to pull up here. This property, I guess, is not really that unique among the home for the handicapped properties in that the residents walk to the bus from the house, or there's some means to do that. The other thing is, I think that if you look at the driveway layout and the configuration, there is a pad right about here. It's about 10 or 20 feet. It does allow a standard vehicle to complete a 3-point turn on that driveway, and I've seen accessible vans come and go from this location. So I don't think you can say that there's no way that they can use this property for people with disabilities or physical handicaps, and certainly we're not suggesting that they couldn't, and they certainly could put in accessible ramps and so forth if need be. That's their right. But certainly a standard vehicle equipped to be handicap accessible could access the property. This is just about the We Care bus. Moreover, I would point out that given the relationship with We Care that the Home for the Handicapped has, that it seems to me before they acquired this property, they would have known these things about access, about turnaround, about the ability to walk up and down the sidewalk given the length. And for the first year and a half, I suppose, that they've been here, we don't have any problems. Now, what this variance will do is funnel more traffic down our street, congest an already congested intersection further, shift parking further into the neighborhood. In conclusion, I just want to leave you with this. And let some of my neighbors share their points of view. This is a photo taken the other day of the residents accessing the We Care bus. The weather's generally okay. There's snow on the ground, but not on the sidewalk. There's 4 residents in the house. Every single one of them was able to negotiate the sidewalk down to the We Care bus. I do note, and I appreciate, that there is a woman with a walker that I did watch progress down the sidewalk. She seemed to be able to do that. They had some help. Note that they do have round-the-clock care to assist with that. It just seems to me that the standard is not here to support a variance from the code, but rather there may be some other practical means that could be utilized to allow the property to be used in its present configuration. And with that, I'll yield for additional questions of me or for my neighbors to testify.
Who would like to be the next neighbor to testify?
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sander, and my wife Jennifer is in the audience, and we have 4 children, Luke, Ryan, Jillian, and Matthew. age 8, 10, 12, and 14. And we reside at 564 North Minnesota Avenue, the Witzig's house. And I want to start off by saying we love our neighbors, all of them. And we understand that this variance is being put forward, and it could be considered as a safety consideration for the transport and delivery of individuals that reside there at the duplex. I'm coming to this group, this board tonight, to bring up 3 concerns, and my first concern is on safety. There are 19 children that live on our street, and I included the T-intersection with Polk, because we've had a couple neighbors move in that also have young kids. Of those 19 children, 15 of them are under the age of 14. My first concern, as I stated earlier, is in regards to safety. As you are well aware, there is no sidewalk that extends beyond the Witzig's house or our property along Minnesota. At this location here, I would call this a 3 points of direction of vehicle type traffic. And if you're familiar with this, there is a slight grade that drops down to Jackson Street. If you've had children and they're using bicycles, big wheels, scooters, skateboards, ripsticks, rollerblades, we understand that there is a grade that goes down to a state highway. My concern is now a driveway in that location is going to create a 4th point of direction for traffic that's going to come in this direction. As what was mentioned earlier, there is a lot of additional parking at that point. And I think all of us can attest that when you turn in and out of Minnesota, there's many times traffic parked on both sides of the street. I don't have a concern with that. But if we add one more point of traffic there, potential traffic pulling in and pulling out, especially within 50 feet. Okay, to frame that, folks, Mustang League Baseball, home plate to the pitcher's mound is about 45 feet. That's a distance a 9 or 10-year-old pitches. That doesn't leave much margin of error for someone to correct when we have children on that street. And I say that there's children. Morton offers a tremendous amount of opportunity for the residents in this neighborhood. You have the soccer complex, which is due east. You've got 2 schools that are due west. That street gets a lot of foot traffic and will continue to have a lot of foot traffic. So our first concern is the safety of everyone involved. And there's got to be a compromise with that. My second concern is on the intended purpose of this property. As Mr. Oswald mentioned, it was zoned residential. The concern that I have with the purpose of this drive, and it is for a wonderful cause. I truly believe in the cause and the services that are being provided. But our concern is that this request is business-based and not necessarily residential-based. It's based off the components associated with this business. I circulated a petition, went door to door, and asked people, as I'm involved in education, it's about getting the information up front and having honest conversations. Most of the people on my side of the street are in opposition to this. One of my neighbors who is not here mentioned, he said, Jimmy John's and Domino's don't even have the kind of access that this drive would provide their businesses. That resonates with me, okay? It's a residential property, but I truly believe that this decision, this variance, is more based off a business type model. Okay? My third point of concern is for the future purpose and longevity of this property. And Mr. Oswald used this language, incremental change. I know that the intended purpose and our neighbors are wonderful people. This property, while this property would remain a SILA, the decision for this variance carries a certain specific intended purpose. for the ability for the We Care bus to deliver and pick up people. Here's my concern to all of you. What happens when this property changes hands? What kind of assurance and guarantees will we have moving forward that the intended purpose and decision that is being brought forward to you tonight maintains that way and hits all the other areas that I have brought up? We're not bringing this issue to be difficult residents. We're bringing this issue to you because we do have a concern for the children of our community, for the longevity of this property, and for the intended purposes of delivering services. As I mentioned earlier, I did bring forward, I'd like to bring forward a petition that is signed by residents on this street. And also I did include two addresses that are on Polk Street are the addresses that are at the termination of the intersection of Polk and Minnesota that I'd like to present that is in opposition of this variance. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, could I ask,
Yeah.
not to interrupt at this point, I just, real quick question. Roger, I mean, you'd have to have a variance, but would like a circle drive work for something like this or not? Or has it been considered? I'm saying just that existing drive that's there to just make it go around and connect. I would, yes.
Yeah, that was considered, I mean, that was brought up, and IDOT will not approve that.
IDOT will not approve for it to be just where you can just loop right around.
They wouldn't have another opening on Jackson.
There's two issues with that. There, and I don't know what they call it, but their pattern for turning, they said this is not enough space to turn and come out this same driveway, and they won't allow an added driveway.
I'm saying to go into.
Yeah, like coming from, by this fire
Yeah.
hydrant.
They're saying that for that size vehicle, this doesn't, there's a pattern they put on that, I can't think what the term is.
They put the turning template to it, and it wouldn't work according to the IDOT engineer.
And they wouldn't, we asked, Mr. Oswald asked us to check that they would not allow a second, even if we moved one driveway here. This one is already close to 50 feet, but they wouldn't allow a second.
So you cannot, but you cannot connect it onto Minnesota?
Yeah, that's what they're asking to do.
No, I'm saying, yes, for it to go to where it's not, what you're saying or proposing, I'm looking at the drawing, is the drive just goes straight in, no?
No,
The
it's
driveway
got
has to
hey,
angle a bit,
Kevin.
because it has to be 50 feet back from the curb line, so the driveway would go like this.
But is it connecting to the drive in the front?
Yes.
Okay, because when I'm looking at the drawing, it doesn't appear that
You
way.
got the wrong drawing. That's that.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay.
I've drawn the screen, but Roger
Yeah,
probably wouldn't
you're
want me to do
all-
that.
All right,
Did that answer your question?
yes.
I have two questions for you. The first one is, have you ever considered a cutout into the property there where the vehicle could pull up and stop, where they could not be on the street?
So you're asking for a parking area off of
Yeah.
Minnesota?
Yes. Just a
Like in
cutout.
here?
Yeah.
I assume that would be considered a driveway in the same issue. I don't know that Roger would have
And
to
then
say.
it would revert back if you left the property. And also, the second question is there any more exit out of that house besides, or the duplex besides the front? Can it come out that end or not?
No,
No, it's bedroom.
There's bedrooms.
It's bedroom there?
Bedrooms,
Okay.
bathrooms, and bedrooms. This entrance into the living room here, entrance into the living room there.
Okay.
The only way to do that would be to put a driveway into the back, which is legal, and use the patio door here. But that would be worse, because we'd be moving the traffic further up Minnesota instead of keeping it at this end.
I wouldn't have a second.
Okay, if you want to be sworn in.
Before Arlene swears you in, I want for the record to identify the petition that was delivered in the last presenter's case has been marked as Exhibit F for purposes of record.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Hello, my name is Matt Kunkel. My wife and I live at 401 North Minnesota, right across from the property we're discussing. One of our main concerns is obviously the traffic, and I think you have one of the pictures we took just the other day that shows the amount of the cars parked in front of our driveway. A lot of the cars also happen to park right along in this vicinity, which makes it difficult for us to back out. We have an 18-year-old son. Recently got his license. He's had a couple close calls with the cars parked there. Granted, that is on him. We've asked the folks that work there a few times if they could just, park either further up the street or closer to the corner to try to avoid doing that, so we don't accidentally hit them. It still happens today. So one of our concerns. We're also concerned that we are accommodating a commercial vehicle at a residential property. So to put the driveway in, it would be accommodating that commercial vehicle, and we're curious as to why one of their other vehicles can't do the same thing. If they're already using other vehicles to pick those folks up, why can't they use those instead? Like Mr. Sanderson, I also went around and collected petitions. There were a few of us that went around and did that. I'd like to submit this as Exhibit G. Great, okay.
You've been well versed.
And that's all. Are there any questions for me?
If this driveway comes out, I mean, there's commercial trucks go up and down you guys' street every day with garbage trucks,
Correct.
delivery trucks. I don't know how many times this week here van, comes. That's just my only deal with commercial vehicles, as far as their use. There's a public street, they can go up and down it all they want. So I don't know if anybody, do we have any other?
If I could speak to that point, Stephen, I
You
would
want to step
say-
up to the podium?
Sure, no problem. If I could speak to the commercial vehicle point, I think the point Matt's trying to make is not that we don't have commercial traffic that does go up and down that street. UPS, FedEx, the post office, they use the street. WeCare uses the street right now, frankly. But you're changing the residential property to allow this commercial vehicle to fit up on the property. If I had a large truck or I had a limousine service that I was running and I couldn't maneuver that vehicle on my property, I couldn't come in here and get a variance to do that very easily. But in this case, we're changing the property fundamentally in order to allow a vehicle to enter the property that we understand cannot back up. We can't talk to the representatives of that organization as to why it'll back up on some residential streets, why it won't turn around on a larger pad in the front yard here and back out to Jackson. We're fundamentally changing this to allow essentially through traffic from Jackson Street over to North Minnesota for a commercial vehicle and frankly other traffic.
Now, do we understand that, you guys all understand, they can put a driveway in the back? Is that
Well, this is the first
viable
time that's
option?
been mentioned to us that they were going to do that. I suppose they could also put a sidewalk back there.
I'm just saying that I think the driveway looked better than a garage in 408's backyard.
I want to be very careful when we share. We're not saying that we have intention to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, we tried to look through all the options, and on Friday after we were on a conference call with Mr. Oswald, who went back through and all the measurements, that became obvious was something we had not read. And it's just to point out that what we're requesting to do is actually less onerous than that would be. That would
Yeah.
be legal, any property owner could do it, but we're not saying that's our next step.
Right,
I don't
right.
want to misrepresent that. It's not that we wouldn't, I don't know where our next steps are,
Yeah.
but it's not, we're not here to threaten anybody. I want to be
Right.
very clear about that.
Right. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody in the audience, and anybody else want to speak?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah. Hey, Ron, you can sit down. You want?
Good evening. Tate Chambers. I live at 408, and you're right. I wouldn't want a garage or a driveway in my backyard. I'm here with my wife, Kathy, and, as we thought about what we were going to say tonight and actually prayed about it, we came to the conclusion that the very first thing we wanted to say was that this house right here is a blessing to our neighborhood. And I want to thank you for bringing them there. We've made great friends across this fence right here. Great friends. I wouldn't want to see anything to the detriment of those folks. They're great. We love having the house there. It's a good thing. Here's my concern. I'll be short and simple. Kathy and I walk out onto Jackson in the summertime almost every night. When you get the cars here and the cars here, it's almost impossible to get through there because you're having cars swinging off this way and swinging off this way and coming down this way, and you can't walk up in the yard. There is no sidewalk there. How do you get through this? A total chokehold right there. So to that chokehold, you're going to add another point of entry. I can't stand here and tell you what the impact of that'll be because we'll have to experience it. But I can tell you that it's dangerous at times now, and I can't imagine it wouldn't be more dangerous with that there. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I guess my only concern as far as Jackson, I don't think that road's so busy, anything backing up there, any type of big van or a car, that's a terrible street, busy. I know you guys have your concerns. I personally, as far as what they do, and I know you might think it's commercial business, but I think as far as a safety deal, it has to be better coming out on Minnesota. Now, I can't tell you either if it's going to increase or decrease the danger or the safety, of everybody on that street, but I just personally don't see the problem with it, but.
Can I address a couple of questions?
Yeah, yes, you can.
So I mean this sincerely. We've lived in Morton since 1981. I wouldn't live anywhere else. And one of the things I appreciate is that we can have civil discussions about concerns. And we've had them here before. And actually, there was one toward the end of '88 that wasn't so civil. When we first came into the neighborhood, we had a very ugly town hall meeting. But it ended with the support of the village, and it ended with those people who testified against us being our neighbors, and some of them working for us. That's sort of neither here nor there, but I just want to address these as non-contentious as I can. But I understand that the wheat caravan looks commercial, but by definition, it's residential. It's what will pick you up when you can't drive anymore. It's what you will use to stay in your home. It only does residential. It takes older people who can't drive to the doctor's office, to this place for dances or whatever is occurring. So while it looks different, it is a residential vehicle and it has to be treated as that. It's not commerce. And it's not a business. While we own it, other people are there, our staff are paid. By definition, under village law and under federal law, it's a single family dwelling. In this case, a duplex, a dual family dwelling. And I think you know and we know we want to be careful with that, but the city can't. I want to be careful I say this, but we can't put up barriers to people with disabilities living in communities, and neither can the city. We wouldn't bring suit against you. I want you to know that. It has nothing to do with that, but it's a legal issue of people with disabilities having a right to live in communities and us finding ways to support them. So I want to say that kindly and acknowledge it's a residence. By village law, it's an R1 based on how it's being used. And will stay that, so it can't be sold and made into a Casey's or something like that. It maintains its, while the driveway would change, would stay there, it can't be made into something else. Not without you changing it. It is what it is. In the last, I've heard the concerns about the traffic, and I understand those. I've seen them. We know that to be true. It's true in each neighborhood where we are. It's a function of serving people in a group home. We try to minimize it. We can't prove there'd be less traffic, but I can't see how there couldn't be less. As I listen to the concerns that are there, part of the reason we can't use this, there is a pad here for turning, but if our people park there and somebody else comes in and they can't get out, if there's a way to get through, we can use parking on this side or in that pad because it won't be blocked. So we direct our staff not to park there. By definition, we do. How much we can change that, I don't know. And clearly, well, it seems to us that when we hear stops here, they're there 5-10 minutes. They're blocking Minnesota with a large vehicle. That'd be preferable to block our home. And then we just pull out of the way. So I really do think that actually some of the concerns presented are ones which would be partially alleviated, not entirely. You know, we can't do that piece. There may have been one other thing I wanted to make, but I don't remember what it was, and I don't see it right now, so I'll leave it at that, unless you have other questions.
Does anybody on the board have any questions?
I have a question for Roger. At the back of this building, you said they can have a drive there without a variance?
Well, since the property is zoned R2 and it's a two-family home, they could have a second drive going to a garage, but they would have to make alterations to the existing garage that's there and possibly the drive as well in order to do that.
I see. I was just thinking that they could back up the U-Care bus into the back of the building there and load up. Might be easier than coming off of Jackson and going out on Minnesota.
It's a good question. We want to remain flexible, as Mr. Oswald brought up questions. We've been through 3 or 4 discussions, however many, and tried to address each of those. And I know what the other comment I wanted to make was. There is a lady who lives there. She is a walker. And I'm going to say this, kind of an emotional, but if your mother used a walker, you wouldn't want her to have to walk 75 feet out to the street in the summer. It's a difficulty for her. We would like for her to have access that meets what her needs are, which is what you would do. If it was your wife, you'd pull up to the front door. If it's We Care, we would like that to be manageable. It's not that she can't do it. My mother's was permanently paralyzed this spring. Her disability makes access a total change to her. I know things I never knew before. Parking spaces for somebody with a disability are not big enough for a van to unload. So you make it as convenient as you can. We don't want it to be a hardship. And I understand the concerns, but we work hard with our neighborhoods. And I appreciate that these neighbors have acknowledged that. We'd continue to do that. And we want to answer whatever questions we can. Thanks.
Does the board have any questions, Ron?
I just want to make sure I have a clear understanding, because obviously there's a lot of residents here tonight. Is the concern, is it backing out on the Minnesota? Is that the concern with the safety? If he pulls in if they pull in, We Care pulls in, and they back up, is that the concern?
No, they'll pull through.
They're going to
Pull through, I understand that, but I'm looking at the pictures, the ones that you presented as exhibits, like, I see all the cars here for is this typical?
Yes, sometimes it's more than that. I mean, sometimes it is less than that.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the other one where I don't see it, then I'm looking at the satellite image.
I will say the last couple of weeks there's been less traffic on
Yeah, I understand the pull-through, but I'm thinking they're already there sitting right now, right? Picking people up on Minnesota?
Those are employees' cars, too.
No, I'm talking about the We Care,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Right.
That's already there.
Right. We're suggesting that the addition of this drive, and I'll speak, there's a couple on the petition that Matt submitted. Mike and Joyce Kaiser live across on Jackson. They use this for street parking with their overflow. In fact, I think it's their blue vehicles that are in that second picture. They park there actually quite frequently. Their suggestion was if you put this drive there, that's going to take up 3 spots that would otherwise be available for parking for other folks and shift it further back into the neighborhood. So that's one of our primary concerns, is that you're further congesting an already congested intersection. Now, I understand it's not at all hours of the day, but particularly on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, you can have as many as 10 cars stacked up down there for several hours. So I think that's our primary concern. The other concern is if you put that through drive in there, there's traffic right now at that duplex that comes and goes off of Jackson Street. Actually, significant traffic on the weekends for family members visiting. Now suddenly, as Ron testified, you can't control what people are going to do. I would posit to you that it's going to be easier for them to turn out onto Minnesota than to Jackson. If I were driving, that's probably what I would choose. And then you're either gonna try to turn that corner and go out to Jackson or go down to Minnesota, depending where you're going, in town. So it's a congestion issue probably first and foremost, and, you know, when that street parking is parked there, it causes cars to turn around in our driveways, and I would say that happens back to, 417, 416 North Minnesota, ours at 409, the couples at 401. My kids play in the driveway, and it wasn't a problem the first year and a half. Now, it happens quite frequently that a car will come in on the weekend or during the summertime and make a turn in our driveway when we're not expecting it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Mesner, did you say that if granted the variance, some of these staff workers that work at these homes would be able to be parking off-street? Did I hear you say that?
That's our intention, because currently we instruct them not to use the driveway. Because if they do and a family member pulls up, it's blocked, so we need to leave the driveway open for somebody to pick up and back out. There are certain shifts. Our shifts are 7 to 4 or 7 to 3, and then 4 to 11, 11 to 7 in the morning. And some of those shifts could park in the driveway because there's nobody else coming or going. I don't know, and again, I want to be careful, but you mentioned 8 to 10 cars. I can't imagine what was occurring. We don't have 8 to 10 employees. There would be, in shift change, there's 2 cars. We could have a meeting there of staff, which might occur once a month, and there might be 6 people there. So I don't.
Could alleviate some of this on-street parking.
Our belief is that it will. Right.
May I make a couple comments on it?
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I appreciate, asking that because we need to work through that. Currently, that facility has an extended parking pad. And I appreciate the idea of the drive is going to allow the access of the We Care vehicle to move in and out. That's great. We currently have a problem with people parking along that. I'm not asking for that to go away. But with this variance, you're going to lose 16 feet of available parking space on Minnesota. They already can park in the driveway and are choosing not to do it.
But we instruct them not to.
Yeah.
But they will.
But there's other people that are still parking along there. I'm trying to get this point across. The cars will continue to be there, and what we've done is we're going to create additional 16 feet that no one's going to be able to park, and probably, in all actuality, 15 feet on either side of that driveway, so that the bus can make the appropriate turn. Okay? So our biggest concern in what Mr. Chambers mentioned, it's not so much that there are cars parking there. If we add a fourth direction, and sir, I value your cause, okay? When you have a child that gets hit by a car, it's catastrophic. We can't put our kids in bubble wrap and ensure that, but why would we make a decision that only adds to the complexity and compromises the safety of an already difficult situation? If someone can make the assurance that the cars are not there, I'm all in favor of that, because it's my children and the other children, the Oswald children, the Miller children, that are riding their bikes down this area. And even if you just had to table this, to come on out, take out the tape measure and draw it out there, my kids have no other option than to hit the center mass of a street when I have people turning off of a highway onto Minnesota. I can't account for that.
Thank you. If there's nobody else wants to speak, I think it'll be up to the board. If the board has any more questions, if not, I'd like to hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we grant case 16-0200-10-102C as stated.
I'll second it.
Fedorich,
No.
Jones,
No.
Spar,
Yes.
Warham,
Yes.
Barton.
No.
Thank you.
We have 2 members absent. They'll be given the transcripts and the video, and within the near future, they'll have to cast their votes, and then we'll know at that.
No, they don't vote. They don't vote. If they're not here tonight, they don't vote.
Oh, no vote.
So the matter,
Oh, okay.
the matter
Sorry,
fails for
that's
lack
changed.
of 4 affirmative votes.
Okay, so the variance has been denied. That's changed since we,
That hasn't been the case.
yeah, we've actually,
In years past, they've always been given that.
Yeah.
Well, and I
I
can,
don't know, I'm not an attorney, I'm just telling you
Sure.
what's been done.
Right.
well, and that's something
That's one
I
of the
can
rea-
review with Roger and Tom.
Yeah.
Customarily in other municipal settings I work, if you're not present at the meeting to hear the testimony, you don't have the opportunity to cast a vote. Like as with, other municipal votes, you're not at the board meeting, village board member, you don't get a vote.
okay.
So we can clarify that, and if I made a mistake and spoke in error, that'll be, reported.
So we'll clear that up, and then we'll let everybody know the outcome. I appreciate everybody coming up in their comments. So I guess we'll move on to our second case tonight. 16-03, Matt Michelle Parker requesting a variance for a home addition driveway at 201 East Fernwood Street, zoned R1. Required rear setback is 25 feet. Requested variance of 5 foot 8 inches will allow a setback of 19 foot 4. Maximum width of a drive with 2-car garage is 24 feet. Let's see,
Hello, my name is Matt Parker. I'm here tonight with my wife, Michelle, and we're here to request a variance for a potential building project that we have at our home. The project would involve us repurposing our existing garage, which is on the south end of our home, and building a new garage on the north end of the home. The reason for the variance, there's 2 reasons primarily for us, is that the one is our lot shape. There's many corner lots in Morton, but if you look at the shape of our lot, it's a very triangular shape with a very sharp angle. So we feel that the side and back setbacks encumber us more so than a normal corner lot. And with the scope of this potential garage, you can kind of see where that falls. And the second reason really is kind of a safety aspect for us, and is that when our drive right now on the south end of the house faces, is serviced by Fernwood, and we enter Fernwood from our driveway at a kind of an extreme angle, so it's really difficult to see any traffic coming from the east, whether you're pulling out or backing out. The car's almost in the drive before we get to that point. So we feel that'll put in the garage on the other end of the house. We'll be off of South Main, and we'll enter that South Main at 90 degrees, so we'll be able to see both sides. So appreciate you considering our request.
No, I think it'll look awesome, and I actually think that's a lot better configuration with the new driveway down there for you guys than what you currently have. Does anybody wish to comment this case? Huh, that's a change.
Chairman, will the addition that they put on include 2 more garages and look like it's in the picture here?
That's gonna look just like the picture. The original garage is gonna
Right,
change into a living, or,
living area.
yeah.
Then does the address change to First Avenue, or are you still on Fernwood?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think we would probably prefer to stay still on Fernwood.
Yeah, I think that. What's that? Yeah, I don't know the legality of that, but I would think it.
I actually know that.
Yes, Michelle?
This came up when we did our.
She needs to be sworn in.
And in order to change your address, you have to petition the post office.
Okay, so it's a post, okay. So it's a post office issue.
I'm sorry, but would you mind being sworn in by our reporter, court reporter, and just affirming the testimony?
Raise your hand. You say you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. State your name. Michelle Parker.
And Michelle, I'm going to ask just to confirm the testimony, the statements you made before you're sworn in, those are true and correct, to the best of your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry. Okay, does anybody have any questions to ask Matt?
Oh, I had a question on where the existing driveway is to the house.
Yes,
Are you going to take out that driveway then?
yes,
Okay.
yes. We plan to take out the driveway and extend the landscaping. It's currently along Fernwood up to the driveway, just extend it past the driveway. So hopefully making it look like it was never a garage.
Okay, that's a nice improvement then.
Thank you.
With that, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 1603 as stated.
I'll second.
Jones,
Yes.
Spar,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Barton,
Yes.
Betteridge.
Yes.
Thank you.
You have your variance. You get a permit tomorrow and start in the afternoon.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your patience. Okay, our next case, 1604 Lafayette requesting a variance for a sign at 837 West Jackson, Zone B2. The proposed pylon sign is 96 square feet and will be a height of 80 foot. This is actually the sign that they have right now that I think they're going to move, so if you would. Okay, if you could just wait. We've actually run out of paper for the first time
I know.
ever.
No, that's not true.
Take your time, I got all night. All right.
My name's Leonard Schmellen. I'm here representing La Fiesta Restaurant. We're asking for a variance that the existing sign at the existing location be allowed to be moved to the new location. And I believe you stated it was 80 foot, it's only 30 foot tall.
Oh, okay.
So I believe you have a picture of the existing and it has dimensions on it. So it's 30 foot tall, 12 foot wide at the top, 6 foot tall on the upper sign, and then it's got a lower letterboard that's 8 foot wide and 4 foot tall. We're asking that the sign be able to be reused, and from what I understand, the property doesn't front any city street, so any size sign would require a variance, and this lot has basically no frontage. And the reason they're asking for this variance is to make the store more visible for business purposes.
I don't have any issues being, this is a unique type
How about
situation.
comparing the signs to the present signs on that street?
I think they're actually, this one's lower, because I think Kentucky Fried Chicken is, it's tall. It's an 80, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this
So
meets,
it's actually
this
shorter
meets the
than
limit.
Those that are front and accessory. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this case? Board members have any more questions?
Do we want to just change on that
Yeah.
agenda? I don't know. So
I thought it was
it's
late.
noted, it is 80 feet on the agenda, so maybe we just say we changed it to 30.
Yeah,
So
that's
we have
fine.
the right.
Just put that in our motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that case number 16-04 as submitted be approved as requested.
We want to add also, we'll change the agenda to reflect the 30 rather than
30
the 80.
feet.
Yeah, we can't change the agenda. The agenda's fixed when it's posted and for our meeting night, but the action would be less generous than what's on the agenda, so you can still vote on it, and I'm sure Cindy will make a note in a minute that you're approving a 30-foot height for the sign.
Okay. Very good.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Spar,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Barton,
Yes.
Betteridge,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
very much.
Thank you. Last one for tonight. Maybe. Okay, our case number 16-05, Village of Morton is requesting a variance for an accessory structure at 247 East Delwood, zoned R1. Maximum allowed size of the building is 140 square feet. The building is 168 square feet, so it needs a variance of 28 square feet.
Just getting you lined up.
Okay.
Mr. Wright, I got pen and paper, so you can talk all night. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Thank you.
You've got 2 minutes.
I'm hurrying.
Record.
Perhaps I can remind you, we did this once, but we're asking for this variance. There was a permit that had been issued, and it was issued in error. The property owner did exactly what they were supposed to do. They came in and got a building permit. The hardship, which it does create a hardship for the homeowners here, is that they went through the proper steps, did everything according to our guidelines. But the building is too big. It's 28 square foot larger than would be allowed by the size of their lot. The hardship this creates, as I said, is they went through the proper steps, and now this building it's there. It's not one that somebody just drug in and said. It was constructed there. So it's not going to be very easily fixed. That does put a hardship on this homeowner. So we thought it right, after talking with our village attorney, that we should go through this process for them. So that's the purpose that we're here for tonight. So.
And it is a hard, they use 6x6s for their corners, and they did it right.
Yeah.
As a point of clarification, at your last vote on this, there was some discussion that there wouldn't be a hardship if the village paid the owner for the cost to redo the structure. And I would contend that would not be an appropriate consideration. That makes several assumptions that aren't supported on the record. So for purpose of your determination, if you say no, they have to reconstruct the building to conform to the code at their expense.
Any questions? Or?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Is anybody in the audience here for this case? Thank you.
I'd like to make a statement. The last time we discussed this, they said it was similar to the case prior to it. And I see a completely different case here. If I'd look at this case on its own, and I think that's the way you have to look at it, case on its own, I would approve it, because 28 square feet is not a large variance as far as what I can see. And it looks fine on the property. It's not in a tree like the other one. This is on the ground. And it looks good, it's set well on the property, and I don't see a problem with it. That's why I just want to make sure, clarify that it's not similar to the treehouse that we discussed before.
I agree with Grant.
And I guess for what it's worth, the person that came in and brought this to our attention, that caused me to go out and look, and then one thing led to 6 others. Bottom line is, he's been in twice, and 2 times asked, he says, can we just forget this? And I go, well, the door is open already. We can't go back and undo it. So this is the way to do it and make it right. So.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to grant case 16-05 under 1010-2C as stated.
I second.
Spar,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Barton,
Yes.
Betteridge,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's all of them for tonight. Roger?
I've got nothing.
All right. With that, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Aye.